I always wanted to go camping in Wyoming, the best state for camping in America. I had heard about the stunning scenery, abundant wildlife, and the dark skies. I decided to book a site at High Plains Camping, a campground that offered a quiet and shady setting beside the White River. It was only 5 miles from the entrance of Badlands National Park, where I planned to do some hiking and exploring. I arrived at the campground in the late afternoon after a long drive from Colorado. I checked in at the office, where the friendly staff gave me a map and directions to my site. I drove to the back of the campground, where I found a spacious and secluded spot under a large cottonwood tree. I set up my tent, unpacked my gear, and made a fire in the fire ring. I cooked some hot dogs and beans and enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and purple hues. I heard some crickets chirping and a coyote howling in the distance. I felt relaxed and happy. After dinner, I decided to take a walk around the campground to stretch my legs and see what else was there. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. I followed the gravel road that looped around the campground, passing by some other campsites. Most of them were empty or had RVs parked in them. I didn't see any other tents like mine. I guessed that most people preferred the comfort and convenience of their vehicles. I felt a bit smug, thinking that I was more in touch with nature, venturing into the heart of the wilderness, and the sense of adventure was palpable. The forest around me was silent, except for the occasional rustling of leaves or the distant call of an unknown bird. As I continued climbing, I noticed the trees seemed to close in around the trail, casting long shadows that added to the eerie atmosphere. The wind whispered through the pines, giving the trail its name, the Whispering Pines Trail. I couldn't help but feel a shiver down my spine as I walked deeper into the forest. The path was getting narrower, and the light was fading fast. I reached for my flashlight and turned it on, its beam cutting through the encroaching darkness. Just when I thought the trail couldn't get any stranger, I heard a faint, whispering sound coming from the trees. It was as if the forest itself was trying to communicate with me, and I strained to make out the words. The voice was soft and unintelligible, but it sent a chill down my spine. Ignoring the strange sensation, I pressed on, determined to complete the hike. I knew I was getting close to the end, and the anticipation of reaching the summit kept me going. Finally, I emerged from the dense forest onto a rocky outcrop that offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the surrounding landscape. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the mountains, forests, and lakes below. I felt a sense of accomplishment and awe as I took in the beauty of the scene. However, my elation was short-lived as I realized that darkness was descending rapidly, and I needed to make my way back down the trail. Reluctantly, I began my descent, knowing that I had to navigate the steep and rocky terrain carefully. As I made my way down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant sound, seemed amplified in the growing darkness. Then, as I crossed the same bridge I had earlier, I heard that same strange splash in the water. This time, I summoned the courage to shine my flashlight into the creek below. What I saw froze me in my tracks. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at me, reflecting the light of my flashlight. It was too large to be a fish or a snake, and the eyes held a malevolent glint. Fear gripped me, and I backed away from the bridge, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I had to continue my descent, couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued by something unseen and sinister. The trail seemed never-ending as I navigated the dark forest, the whispering voices growing louder and more insistent. My flashlight flickered, threatening to go out at any moment. I quickened my pace, desperate to reach the safety of my car. Finally, I burst out of the forest and into the clearing where my car was parked. I wasted no time in throwing my backpack into the trunk and driving away, leaving the Whispering Pines Trail and its mysteries behind me. To this day, I can't explain the strange occurrences I experienced on that hike. But one thing is for sure. It was a journey that tested my courage and left me with an unsettling feeling that the wilderness holds secrets beyond our understanding. Night. I found my tent site, which was nestled among tall pine trees with a view of the serene lake. It was a perfect spot for a peaceful getaway. I set up my tent, organized my campsite, and built a small fire in the fire pit for the evening. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden light over the campground. After enjoying a simple dinner, I decided to take a walk along the shore of the lake. The scenery was breathtaking, with the Grand Tetons towering in the distance and the clear, pristine water reflecting the fading colors of the sunset. It was a tranquil and serene evening, and I couldn't have been happier. As I walked along the shoreline, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace and connection with nature. The gentle lapping of the water, the chirping of the crickets, and the distant call of a loon all contributed to the magical atmosphere. However, I remembered the warnings about wildlife, particularly bears, in the area. I made sure to keep a safe distance from any dense underbrush and stayed alert as I continued my walk. It was getting darker, and I knew it was time to head back to my campsite. As I approached my tent, I noticed a rustling in the bushes nearby. My heart skipped a beat as I realized something was moving there. I grabbed my flashlight and cautiously shone it in the direction of the noise. My heart sank as the beam of light revealed a large, dark shape. It was a bear, standing only a few feet away from me. Fear washed over me as I locked eyes with the bear. Its small, dark eyes stared at me, and it bared its teeth in a menacing snarl. I knew I had to stay calm and not provoke the bear, but my mind raced with panic. I remembered the advice to make myself look big and loud, but I was too terrified to move or speak. The bear took a step toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. This tense standoff continued for what felt like an eternity. With each step, I took back mirrored by a step forward from the bear. I was slowly being pushed to the edge of a hill that dropped steeply to the lake below. Panic surged through me as I realized I was trapped. The bear suddenly lunged at me, and I screamed in terror. I swung my backpack at its head in a desperate attempt to fend it off, but the bear dodged the blow and sank its teeth into my arm. The pain was excruciating, and I felt warm blood flowing from the wound. Desperation gave me strength, and I grabbed the bear's fur, trying to push it away. But the bear was immensely powerful and retaliated by clawing at my chest and face, causing more pain and blood loss. I knew that my situation was dire, and I feared that this encounter would be my end. Just when I felt hope slipping away, a gunshot echoed through the woods. The bear let out a roar of pain and released its grip on me, collapsing to the ground. I looked up and saw a man in a ranger's uniform standing on the trail, holding a rifle. Relief washed over me as he approached, and he quickly assessed my injuries. "Don't worry," he reassured me. "You're going to be okay. I heard your scream and came as fast as I could." He explained that the bear was a rogue that had been attacking other hikers and animals in the area. He had been tracking it for weeks and had been nearby when he heard my cries for help. After stabilizing my injuries, he called for backup on his radio and arranged for me to be transported to the nearest hospital. I survived the harrowing encounter, thanks to the timely intervention of the ranger. My love for camping remained undiminished, but I had gained a newfound respect for the wilderness, excited about the prospect of spending a week in the wilderness, surrounded by nature's beauty. When I arrived at the cabin, I was delighted to find it cozy and well-equipped. It had a small kitchen, a comfortable bed, and a wood-burning stove. It was the perfect base for my camping adventure. I spent my days hiking through the picturesque Rocky Mountains, exploring pristine forests, and enjoying the breathtaking vistas. The wildlife sightings were incredible. I encountered deer, elk, and even a curious fox during my hikes. The nights were filled with the soothing sounds of nature and the clear, star-filled sky. One day, I decided to embark on a longer hike to a remote lake I had read about. The trail led deep into the heart of the forest, and I couldn't resist the allure of the pristine lake surrounded by towering pines. I packed my backpack with essentials, including a map, water, snacks, and my trusty pocket knife. The hike was more challenging than I had anticipated, with steep ascents and rocky terrain. But the promise of the serene lake kept me motivated. As I neared my destination, I was captivated by the serene beauty of the untouched wilderness. I reached the remote lake, and it was everything I had hoped for. The water was crystal clear, and the reflection of the mountains on the surface was mesmerizing. I sat down on a large rock by the shore, took out my book, and began to read, completely absorbed in the natural beauty around me. However, I lost track of time, and before I knew it, the sun was setting. Realizing that I needed to head back to the cabin, I reluctantly packed up my things and started my descent. The trail was becoming progressively darker, and I switched on my flashlight to guide my way. Suddenly, I heard a thunderous roar from behind me. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see a massive grizzly bear standing on its hind legs about 20 feet away. It was snarling, baring its teeth, and emanated an unmistakable aura of anger and danger. Fear coursed through my veins, but I remembered the advice I had received. Don't run, don't scream, and don't make eye contact. Slowly and deliberately, I began to back away from the bear while keeping my flashlight focused on it. I searched for any potential cover, but there was nothing in sight. The bear, however, didn't relent. It continued to approach me, closing the gap between us. My heart pounded in my chest as I maintained my slow retreat, hoping against hope that the bear would lose interest and leave me unharmed. Then, just as the bear was about 10 feet away from me, it suddenly paused, as if contemplating its next move. My breath caught in my throat as I watched in disbelief. Miraculously, the grizzly turned around and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. I was left stunned and grateful for the unexpected reprieve. I had survived a close encounter with one of nature's most formidable creatures, but the mystery of why the bear had spared me remained unanswered. To this day, I still don't know why it chose to walk away, and it serves as a reminder of the unpredictable and awe-inspiring nature of the wilderness. seemed like no one had been there for years, but it offered some protection from the impending storm, and I decided to take refuge inside. I quickly closed the door behind me and took a moment to catch my breath. The wind outside howled, and the rain began to pour, drumming loudly on the cabin's roof. I knew I had made the right decision to seek shelter. Despite the eerie atmosphere of the cabin, I decided to explore it a bit. It had a rustic charm, with wooden beams and a stone fireplace. The furniture, though in disrepair, hinted at a cozy past. There was a small kitchenette with a rusty sink, a table with a few old chairs, and a worn-out couch. It was clear that this place had once been a retreat for those seeking solitude and nature. As I settled in, I felt a mix of relief and unease. I knew I was far from the comfort of my rented cabin, and I had no way of communicating with anyone. I decided to wait out the storm and hoped that it would pass quickly. I gathered some firewood from a pile in the corner, hoping to at least make a small fire to keep warm. The hours passed slowly as I huddled by the dim light of the cabin's fading windows. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and the daylight faded away. I realized I might be spending the night in this abandoned cabin. With the fire crackling in the fireplace, I decided to explore the cabin a bit more. I found an old journal on a dusty shelf, filled with handwritten entries dating back many years. The journal chronicled the experiences of previous visitors to the cabin, their encounters with wildlife, their love for the solitude of the mountains, and their appreciation of the simple life it offered. Reading through the journal, I began to feel a connection to those who had found solace here before me. It made me appreciate the unexpected turn of events that had led me to this remote shelter. As I read, I felt a sense of camaraderie with the past occupants of the cabin, who, like me, had sought refuge from the wilderness. Despite the eerie surroundings and the uncertainty of the situation, I eventually managed to fall asleep by the fading light of the fire. The storm raged on outside, but the cabin provided a small sense of security. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of birdsong and the soft light of dawn filtering through the cabin's windows. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside fresh and clean. I decided to venture back out and try to find my way back to the rented cabin. As I stepped outside, I realized that the abandoned cabin had served as a temporary sanctuary, a place of refuge in a moment of need. It was a reminder that nature could be unpredictable and unforgiving, but it also held moments of unexpected connection and the potential for personal growth. With a renewed sense of determination and adventure, I set off to retrace my steps and find my way back to the familiar surroundings of the Rocky Mountains. Though I had been lost and found solace in an abandoned cabin, I was ready to continue my solo adventure, knowing that every experience in the wilderness had its own unique lessons to offer. Scenery, abundant wildlife, and the allure of the great outdoors. So, when I finally got the opportunity to visit, I eagerly packed my camping gear and set out for an adventure that I hoped would be both thrilling and serene. After a long drive, I arrived at my chosen campsite, nestled in the midst of a dense forest. The surroundings were enchanting, with towering pine trees and the promise of pristine natural beauty. I quickly set up my tent, eager to immerse myself in this wilderness experience. The first day was spent exploring the nearby trails, taking in the breathtaking views, and capturing the beauty of nature through my camera lens. I was in my element, surrounded by the wonders of the outdoors, and it was everything I had hoped for. As night fell, I returned to my campsite and lit a warm, crackling fire. The ambience was peaceful and comforting, and I prepared a simple meal as I enjoyed the solitude. There's a unique serenity that descends upon the wilderness at night, and I cherished every moment of it. The next morning, I decided to embark on a more ambitious adventure, a hike to a secluded lake that promised to be a hidden gem. Armed with a map, snacks, and water, I set off early, excited to explore the unknown. The hike was challenging, with steep inclines and rugged terrain, but the promise of the tranquil lake kept me motivated. Along the way, I encountered the wonders of the wilderness: deer, rabbits, and a symphony of birdsong. However, I remained vigilant, aware of the potential dangers lurking in the wild. After hours of trekking, I reached the pristine lake, and it was a sight to behold. Its deep blue waters mirrored the surrounding mountains and the open sky above, creating a serene and untouched paradise. I rested on a rock by the shore, indulging in my snacks and savoring the solitude. But as I continued my hike back to the campsite, things took an unexpected turn. Somehow, I found myself off the trail, lost in unfamiliar surroundings. Panic set in as I struggled to retrace my steps and regain my bearings. The wilderness could be unforgiving, and I knew I needed to find my way back before darkness descended. As I desperately searched for familiar landmarks, ominous clouds began to gather on the horizon, a foreboding sign of an impending storm. The weather in the mountains was notorious for its unpredictability, and I couldn't afford to be caught in the wilderness during a storm. With each passing minute, the sky grew darker, and the wind picked up its intensity. Raindrops began to fall, and my sense of urgency intensified. It was then that I spotted a small, abandoned cabin in the distance. Though it appeared decrepit, it offered the promise of shelter from the approaching tempest. I rushed toward the cabin, my heart pounding with a mixture of relief and trepidation. As I pushed open the creaking door and entered, I was met with an eerie and unsettling atmosphere. The cabin was dark, with the odor of mold and decay permeating the air. I knew I had no other choice but to stay in this unsettling place. I found a corner with some blankets and a candle, and attempted to make myself as comfortable as possible. The storm raged outside, the howling wind and the pounding rain creating an unsettling soundtrack to my predicament. Then, in the midst of this eerie isolation, I heard a sound. Footsteps. They came from above, from the attic, slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was navigating the space. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of fear. Who could be up there? What did they want? I remained still, hoping beyond hope that whoever was above didn't know I was there. The footsteps grew louder, and I heard them descending the stairs from the attic to the main floor. The presence was undeniably real, and my anxiety deepened. Amidst the unnerving silence of the cabin, I heard breathing, heavy and raspy. Then, a voice, an unsettling, low, and menacing voice, pierced the air, asking, "Who's there? Who are you?" Frozen in fear, I dared not answer or move. My mind raced with questions. My heart pounded relentlessly. The voice continued to taunt me, its threats hanging heavy in the stale air of the cabin. The situation seemed hopeless, and I felt trapped, Unable to see or identify the intruder, the voice grew more insistent, demanding a response. But I remained silent, clinging to the hope that the intruder would eventually leave. Then, as if guided by an unknown force, the footsteps stopped right outside the door. I heard the doorknob turn slowly and quietly, and the door creaked open. The dim light from outside spilled into the cabin, revealing only shadows and uncertainty. My heart raced as I closed my eyes and waited for whatever would come next. But nothing did. There were no menacing words, no weapon, no attack, just silence. I opened my eyes, tentatively, and found myself alone once more. The cabin remained empty, devoid of any presence other than myself. Confusion and terror gripped me as I cautiously approached the open door, peering outside into the night. There was nothing to see but the familiar darkness of the wilderness. The same trees, rocks, and shadows as before. The storm had passed, and the sky was now clear, adorned with the moon and stars. Yet, their beauty offered no comfort in the midst of my confusion and fear. I was alone and exposed, with no answers to the unsettling encounter I had just experienced. Determined to escape this unsettling place, I made a quick decision. Without looking back or second-guessing, I ran toward the trail, retracing my steps and praying that I would find my way back to safety. My belongings, the cabin, and the mysteries within it were left behind as I sprinted toward the campsite. My only goal to escape the wilderness and the eerie encounter that had shaken my very core. When I reached the campsite, I quickly located my car, jumped inside, and locked the doors. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I started the engine and drove away without looking back. It was only when I reached the nearest town and checked into a motel that I allowed myself to breathe, my mind still reeling from the inexplicable events that had unfolded in the Wyoming wilderness. As I reflected on my harrowing experience, I realized that the wilderness, for all its beauty, could be a place of both wonder and terror, where the line between reality and the unknown could blur in the most unexpected ways. The mysteries of that abandoned cabin and the presence within it remained unresolved, serving as a haunting reminder of the enigmatic nature of the wild. My curiosity piqued by the discovery of the hidden cabin. I decided to deviate from the trail and investigate further. The cabin appeared to be old and weathered, blending seamlessly into the surrounding forest. It had an aura of mystery about it, and I couldn't resist the urge to explore this unexpected find. Leaving the trail behind, I ventured closer to the cabin, cautiously approaching its entrance. The door, weathered and slightly ajar, seemed to beckon me inside. My instincts told me to be cautious, but my adventurous spirit won out. Pushing the door open, I entered the dimly lit interior of the cabin. The air was still, and the scent of aged wood and memories hung in the air. Cobwebs adorned the corners, and dust motes danced in the faint light that filtered through the windows. The cabin held a rustic charm that transported me back in time. It contained remnants of a life once lived, faded photographs, old books, and a worn rocking chair by the fireplace. It was as if the cabin had been abandoned abruptly, leaving behind a time capsule of the past. As I explored further, I couldn't help but wonder about the cabin's history. Who had lived here? Why had it been left untouched for so long? It was a place that seemed to hold untold stories, waiting to be uncovered. While my curiosity had drawn me inside, a sense of unease gradually settled over me. The isolation of the cabin, its eerie stillness, and the mystery of its abandonment weighed on my mind. I decided to leave and continue my hike back to the campsite, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin had secrets it was keeping. Returning to the campsite, I couldn't help but think about the hidden cabin in the woods. It was a curious and unexpected find, and the questions surrounding its past lingered in my thoughts. Despite the unease it had evoked, a part of me felt drawn to revisit the cabin and explore its mysteries further. As the day unfolded, I resumed my camping routine, cooking meals over an open fire, reading, and soaking in the natural beauty of the surroundings. The following night, I found myself unable to resist the allure of the cabin once more. Under the cover of darkness, armed with a flashlight, I decided to return to the mysterious cabin and unravel its secrets. Navigating the familiar trail and reaching the cabin, I cautiously pushed open the door once more. This time, I explored the cabin more thoroughly, examining the old photographs and items that adorned the walls and shelves. Each artifact seemed to offer a glimpse into the lives of the cabin's former inhabitants, but their identities and stories remained elusive. As I ventured deeper into the cabin, I discovered a small journal tucked away on a dusty shelf. Its pages held handwritten entries, recounting the experiences and musings of someone who had once called this place home. The journal revealed tales of solitude, of finding solace in the wilderness, and of the simple joys of life. Reading through the journal, I felt a connection to the person who had penned these words. It was as though I was sharing in their journey through time, understanding their love for this remote corner of the world and the sense of freedom it offered. Yet, as I delved deeper into the journal, I came across entries that hinted at an increasing sense of isolation and unease. The author spoke of strange occurrences in the woods, of unsettling sounds at night, and of a growing sense of being watched. These entries painted a picture of a person slowly succumbing to the weight of an eerie presence in the wilderness. As I continued to read, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The journal entries took a darker turn, describing encounters with an enigmatic figure that seemed to haunt the cabin and the surrounding woods. The author's fear and paranoia were palpable, and it was clear that they had reached a breaking point. Despite the unsettling revelations, I couldn't tear myself away from the journal. It was a window into a world of mystery and intrigue, and I was determined to uncover the truth behind the cabin's haunting history. With each page I turned, the author's words became more frenzied and desperate, and it was evident that they believed they were being pursued by an otherworldly entity. The journal abruptly ended, leaving me with an unsettling sense of incompleteness. As I sat in the dimly lit cabin, surrounded by the ghosts of the past, I couldn't ignore the sense of unease that had settled over me. The cabin's history was shrouded in mystery and darkness, and I couldn't help but wonder if the author's fears were rooted in reality. The night was silent, save for the distant sounds of the forest. The weight of the unknown hung heavy in the air, and I knew I had to make a choice. Should I stay and investigate further? Or should I leave the cabin behind and return to the safety of my campsite? With the journal in hand and a flashlight casting long shadows, I made my decision. I would delve deeper into the secrets of the cabin, seeking answers to the questions that had plagued me since my first discovery. Little did I know that my decision would lead me down a path filled with chilling revelations and encounters that defied explanation. The cabin in the woods held secrets that were darker and more enigmatic than I could have ever imagined, and my journey into its mysteries had only just begun. Your instinct to leave the cabin behind and return to the trail was undoubtedly the right choice, given the unsettling circumstances you found yourself in. The eerie and abandoned cabin, with its "keep out" sign, had clearly held its share of secrets, and the scream you heard from within only added to the sense of foreboding. As you sprinted back to the trail, your heart pounding and your breath quickening, the urgency of escape was all-consuming. You hoped to put as much distance as possible between yourself and the cabin, not wanting to become entangled in whatever dark mysteries it held. Your footsteps echoed in the quiet of the woods as you ran, and your imagination raced with thoughts of what could be lurking in the cabin's shadows. Fear and uncertainty gripped you as you reached the safety of the trail, hoping to blend back into the natural beauty of the surrounding wilderness. Once back on the familiar path, you pushed yourself to maintain a brisk pace, your senses on high alert. The encounter with the cabin had left an indelible mark on your psyche, and you couldn't shake the feeling of being watched or pursued. As you continued your hike through the woods, your thoughts were haunted by the scream you had heard. Who could be inside that abandoned cabin, and why were they screaming? The questions gnawed at you, but a deep sense of unease kept you from turning back to investigate further. The trail led you away from the cabin, and gradually, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift. The sounds of birdsong and rustling leaves returned, and you allowed yourself to believe that you had escaped the eerie presence that had gripped the cabin. Yet, as you continued your hike and eventually returned to your campsite, the mystery of the cabin lingered in your thoughts. It was a haunting reminder of the enigmatic and unpredictable nature of the wilderness, where unexplained occurrences could leave an indelible mark on those who dared to venture into its depths. Throughout the rest of your camping trip, you couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, or the sense that the cabin's mysteries were far from resolved. The solitude and adventure you had sought in the Wyoming wilderness had indeed been found, but it had also been tinged with a chilling encounter that defied explanation. As you eventually packed up your campsite and departed from the High Plains camping area, you carried with you a tale of the cabin in the woods, a tale of fear, curiosity, and an encounter with the unknown that would forever remain etched in your memory. It was a reminder that even in the most serene and picturesque corners of nature, the unexpected and unsettling could always be lurking just beyond the next bend in the trail. In the end, my adventure in the Wyoming wilderness was a mixture of awe-inspiring beauty and unsettling mystery. The breathtaking scenery, abundant wildlife, and free campsites had fulfilled my longing for adventure and solitude. Yet, it was the enigmatic cabin in the woods that had left an indelible mark on my journey. As I departed from the High Plains camping area, I couldn't help but reflect on the eerie encounter with the cabin. The unanswered questions and unsettling memories would stay with me, a testament to the unpredictable and enigmatic nature of the wilderness. While I had sought solace and adventure in the great outdoors, I had also discovered that the natural world could hold secrets far beyond our understanding. The scream from within the cabin would forever remain a haunting echo, a reminder that even in the most serene and picturesque landscapes, the unknown could be lurking just beyond our sight. My journey in Wyoming had been a testament to the duality of nature, its beauty and its mysteries, and as I left the wilderness behind, I carried with me not only memories of its grandeur, but also a newfound appreciation for the untamed and enigmatic corners of the world, where the line between reality and the unknown could blur in the most unexpected ways.